Hey there, fellas. It's Bubba Chungus. Got another magic video for you, if that's what you're into. Let's just cut to the chase. I've been watching Wolfie VGC for like 6 years now. He's my GOAT. I love him. And let's just say homie's taught me a thing or two about thinking critically when it comes to team building. Because he's good at it. He's so good. He just killed everyone with Steelix, for heaven's sakes, bro. What do you gotta do to do that? Now you are an astute viewer, so you may be wondering, that's cool, but like, what the frick does that have to do with Magic the Gathering? Well, let me put y'all on game real quick, because it has everything to do with it. But first, we gotta talk a little bit about the meta. So EDH is lit because it's supposed to have no meta, as we know. However, as we also all know, it definitely does. Let's be for real. One look at EDH rec and you can tell what the meta is for casual commander brackets. And you know what? Have at it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. If you play Magic and you're online in the community at all, you already know this. This is not new information. And this video is not a breakdown of Commander Player Society. So why am I bringing this up at all? This is a deck tech. Well, you astute viewer, you ever checking out new commanders to build? Boom, scrolling through the lists to find a commander that catches your eye? I do. Especially when I worked as a security guard, bro, let me tell you. Maybe you do one of those like random commander generator thingies, or just like the top commanders on EDH rec. Or maybe you just look at spoilers for Marvel and the 20 million new legendary creatures to see if one catches your eye. Will you ever just read one that sounds amazing? You know, you see it and your brain starts swimming and cooking with ideas on what to do with it. That's like the best feeling ever. And then you click on the commander and you just see. Oh, yeah. We're not very creative as a group, are we? Like, we just miss the mark sometimes. I really wanted to play this Finn the Fangbearer as a control equipment deck, not as infect nonsense. Like, come on, we've all been there. And I don't say this to even place blame on anybody. This is just human nature. We're creatures of habit. I don't think that's a bad thing. However, I think humans are at their best when we choose to be something more. Well, this is where I finally get back to my goat Wolf, along with the other innovators of our world. You know, the Kendricks, the Lurdzillas, the Da Vincis, the Toby Foxes, the PewDiePies. You know, the ones who are built different. The ones who don't just obey the law, but the law obeys them. This is what I yearn for in my Magic the Gathering deck building experience. Gosh dang it, I want to be obeyed. And what is their secret, you might ask? Well, to be honest, I can't tell you. I don't know. I can't tell you here. Whatever insufficient thoughts I might have are better suited for another video, and I don't want to pretend I'm some ultimate authoritative figure on game theory or life or anything. However, I will say the more I watch good old Wolfie, the more I see that at the very least he is very intentional, thoughtful. And that's how I strive to be. I want to do the right things, not just because they're right, but for the right reasons. And I think that Wolfie and his team building really encapsulates that. So let's bring it back to Coram, my goat, my beautiful Jund boy. Today is a deck spotlight on the goat! So there I was. I never built a 3-color deck before that I was happy with, and I love green, so I found myself in the Judd neighborhood looking for potential fellas to build around. I remember making a short list of commanders I thought would be interesting. We had Zira the Golden Sting, the Beamtown Bullies, and Thantis the Warweaver. I also thought about Henzi, but low-key at the time I felt a little too dumb to figure out how to play him. Then I found my goat Karam. Immediately I was drawn to his first ability. Oh baby, it is a good one. It says, Karam the Undertaker gets +X+0, where X is the greatest power among creature cards in all graveyards. Like I said, my head started to flood with ideas. The juices were flowing, the neurons were firing. Then I clicked on his page and was met with immediate disappointment. Like, bro, dude, I'm not trying to play no mill deck. Like, I'm sure it's fine, but dang, dude. Like, I have the mirror for that. And see, this is the feeling I'm talking about. Does a Karam deck built to mill work? Like, surely, I'm sure it does. No hate, no problem. It's probably honestly pretty good, but that's not what I was interested in. I wasn't interested in mill. So after looking at EDH rec, it was no help. I knew that this was one of those times where I was on my own. Sure, there were some great card suggestions on there, but it was time to innovate. It was time to channel my inner Wolfie, my inner Albert Einstein, my inner
Isaac Newton. What are you doing here?
And let me tell you, Coram did not disappoint, guys. Not one bit. So, I think the first thing to understand about Coram is why he works in the first place for what I want to do. Big creatures in graveyard equals win. Pretty straightforward, truthfully. Mill is admittedly a pretty good way to get big creatures into the graveyard, especially with a guy like Karam who can play cards you mill directly from your graveyard, but I don't think it's the most optimal way to use him. And even if it is, it's not the way I wanted to use him. Karam himself really only needs one creature in the graveyard to function, and mill is like the antithesis of that. It's really indiscriminate when it comes to what you're getting. And if you assume you'll always be able to play stuff in your graveyard thanks to Karam's ability, well, you're either going to have to expend a significant amount of deck space to back that game plan up or be extremely disappointed when Karam gets removed and then you can't play anything. Mill certainly can be turned into card advantage if you're smart, but at this point in the process, I think we can do better for our boy. The first obvious choice to help Karam is with tutors instead, which seems pretty simple and straightforward. Have a deck with a couple big chonkers like Yargle and Multani who have high power, play a tutor, put said Yargle and Multani in the graveyard, and start swinging. Easy. This will work great for setting up Karam, but it isn't a perfect solution. There's one main problem here, and it's the fact that we really only need one creature in the graveyard to be set up. And if that's true, then in most other cases, the tutors will low-key just be dead draws, because there's not really much else to do with them. You can't just run less tutors, or else Karam will never get set up, and you'll just have a game where you do nothing. But if we're running too many tutors, the deck's going to be flabby and have lots of redundant draws and entomb spells that serve almost no purpose after the first one. Now, we can alleviate this somewhat. The first thing we can do is to make sure there's more than one meaningful entombing target. Things like Anger, Brawn, and Filth all serve as secondary targets. Malignus is a good alternative to Yargle when the circumstances are right, like against a life gain deck since its power and toughness scale with your opponent's health. So having multiple targets kind of helps the issue, but I wouldn't call it a real solution. Even considering the fact that my graveyard might get deleted by hate and I'll have to re-entomb other creatures, I'm not quite sure that this is where I want to be yet. I want my deck to be in my control always. Luckily, using tutors as a base, we can look to other aspects of what a deck might need to search for more solutions. So every deck needs card advantage, and I quickly realized that my access to red in this deck was going to be just as critical as black and green for filling my graveyard, actually. Black and green can entomb, but red can discard. Oh baby. So let's say I'm running my deck and I draw Yargle.
Shit.
I can't entomb him anymore. He's stuck in my hand. Well, fear no longer. Allow me to introduce part of my draw package for this deck. We have Bitter Reunion, an enchantment that lets you discard a card when it enters to draw 2 cards. Very nice. And not only that, but you can also pay 1 and sacrifice it to give creatures haste. In a deck as aggressive as this, it is a very welcome addition. We're also running Faithless Looting. It's cheap. It can be replayed from the graveyard in case it gets milled, or just played again, honestly. Then we also have Thrill of Possibility and Cathartic Reunion. Very epic. So it was around this point that I was starting to feel better about the core of the deck, but that's when I had a breakthrough. See, tutors and discard spells were good, but man, let me tell you, I was kicking around the idea of big score and unexpected windfall as more draw when I found it. The other mechanic I needed to make this deck have the sauce. The other mechanic that not only allowed me to fill my graveyard with big creatures, but also draw, mana fix, have land drops, protect, and pump, and even targeted removal. One mechanic for all of this. This is the mechanic I probably would not have leaned into had I not, like our goat Wolfie, been intentional about how I was building, even if it meant deviation from the norm. Again, not to say that the norm is always bad, but I found what I needed because I intentionally searched for what I needed. You find what you seek. And in the wise words of Jack Harlow, somewhere in there is a lesson. So what is that mechanic in question? Drum roll, please. Cycling. Cycling just does it all for Karam. Firstly, there's regular cycling, which allows you to draw, and this is massive. Titanoth Rex, cycle for 2, boom, you get to draw a card, put an 11/11 into the graveyard to set up Karam, and even put a trample counter on one of your gamers that's out, who will probably be Karam. Technically, this isn't card advantage, but just rummaging. And while that's true in normal cases, I actually want these cards to be in the discard pile typically, so it actually is advantage, especially when you consider any secondary effects that come with it. What's interesting is Titanoth Rex is one of the top cards for Karam on EDH Rec, but there's almost no other cycling creatures to be found there. But it's not just regular cycling, there's also land cycling creatures, and these are honestly incredible for this deck. I've included 5 of them in the list. We have Generous Ent, who has Forest Cycling 1 and 5 power, Oliphant, who has Mountain Cycling 1 and 6 power, Troll of Khazad Doom, who has Swamp Cycling 1 and 6 power, Ruin Grinder, who has Mountain Cycling 2 and 7 power, and Slavering Branch Snapper, who has Forest Cycling 2 and 7 power. These creatures are excellent. They help me color fix, they make sure I have land drops, and they set up Karam, all in the same action. Even Generous Ent, who only has 5 power, makes Karam a respectable 5/5 for 4 mana. And don't forget that when Karam attacks, there's always a chance that you can top deck something very large, which we will get to. I've included a lot of large creatures. So let's take a look at this core. It is incredible. It is efficient. By my count, there are at least 20 cards that directly or indirectly set him up, not including himself. And aside from a couple of the specific entombment spells, all of them serve other functions at the same time, meaning it's incredibly rare to see a game where Karam isn't swinging big and swinging fast. And since we don't have to run a ton of tutors, but we do have them and they do show up, our game plan is very adaptable on the spot, which is very great, very consistent. So now that we have this tutoring, cycling, rummaging core established, I think it's high time we talk about Karam himself, along with the big fellas along for the ride. Then I'll talk about how the rest of the deck is built to support or complement this core strategy of dumping big fellas into the graveyard and then stomping people into the ground. So let me show you the Chonkers. There's 9 of them, and they all fulfill specific roles. I didn't want to just add them to fill slots for large creatures, although we do need lots of large creatures for consistency's sake. But I was able to find some that serve specific roles even outside of just being large. First of all, we have Yargle and Multani, of course. It's the highest printed base power of any creature as of the time of recording at a massive 18/6. This is one of the main cards you will tutor for in an average game. It goes in the graveyard first, probably over half the time. Very good. You have Malignus, whose power and toughness scale with the highest life total of an opponent. It starts bigger than Yargle and Multani and can allow Karam to more easily pick up one-hit kills with commander damage, especially when people are gaining life, which is pretty nice. Obviously, it can also scale down, so you have to be careful about when you choose it over Yargle, but it is very, very potent. Impervious Great Worm is the de facto backup to Yargle and Multani at a very respectable 16/16, and it's non-legendary. It's good in case Yargle is stuck in your hand or got exiled or something. We have Titanoth Rex, who I already mentioned, an 11/11 with cycling that gives a trample counter. What more could you want, honestly? We have Void Winnower, which is particularly nasty because you have a couple reanimate spells in this deck, and it has a respectable 11 power to give to your commander even if you don't end up reanimating it. We have Apex Altasaur, a board wipe on a 10/10 that has some special synergies that will be mentioned later. Also, like Void Winnower, if you can reanimate it, especially early, you can basically lock the game down, especially when you consider how many protection spells we have in here. It can be very oppressive. Galta Primal Hunger is almost always a 12/12 with trample for 2 mana in this deck, considering how much power Karam usually has, so it never feels bad to draw it. It adds more defensive presence to your board, which is nice, but it also exerts an insane amount of offensive pressure for relatively little mana cost. Death Shadow is a 13/13, and it's really nice because you can play it for 1 mana and it will immediately die and go into your graveyard, making it very cost effective, especially when you don't have a way to discard creatures. And lastly, we have Leveler, who's just a big 10/10, but he's also a surprise tool that will help us later. So out of these 9 Chonkers, we have Void Winnower, Galta, and Death Shadow that are the least niche of the Chonkers and are primarily included to help pad the number of large creatures in the deck for consistency's sake. But even those three provide an insane amount of value under the right circumstances. So we got the game plan established. We got our big boys, we got Karam, we got our engine. Now we need to be able to support this game plan. What does Karam need? Well, it should be pretty obvious that first of all, homie needs protection and probably evasion. He's almost always kill on sight because homie's swinging for over 10 commander damage every turn once he's out, most likely. So we need to make sure that he can live to see a couple of attacks. Karam is really nice because you can replay him and he's still set up as long as your graveyard remains untouched. So repeatable help for him is going to be preferred, or cheap single use. His main protection package is full of instant speed cards I chose, also some equipment and a couple of auras. We also have lots of instant speed interaction from cycling effects. Aghanosor Rex and Sanctuary Smasher give indestructible and first strike respectively when cycled. And there's other instants too, like Tamayo's Safekeeping, Bolt Bend, Golgari Charm, and so on and so forth. And then as mentioned earlier, we have the equipment. We have Leyline Axe and Lizard Blades for that sweet, sweet double strike. Mithril Coat gives us instant speed protection.
And of course, the boots.
Xenagos is also included in this deck to help Karam survive combat, seeing as he'll usually have over 15 toughness when it's all said and done. There are also 2 reanimate spells in the deck, so that's always an option too if you're desperate or the tax gets too high. Now let's talk about evasion and haste enabling. I already mentioned Filth and Brawn earlier, who are basically always active since we're running lands with dual types and things like Zeator's Proving Ground to be fetched by many different land cyclers. And just in case, I've added Yavimaya and Urborg, which also helps with mana fixing. Urborg is especially cheeky because I can get it using crop rotation if I foresee a need for Filth later on. I also mentioned earlier the cycling creatures that give trample as well as Leyline Axe, but that's not all. We have 3 lands that help us with evasion too: Kessig Wolf Run, Rogue's Passage, and the Black Gate. Siege Smash can act as removal or instant speed trample. Avia Automech Artisan, I don't know how to frick say your name. Avia Automech Artisan gives just about everything trample, while also making it a bit easier to get some of the large creatures out of your hand with that insane tap ability, which is very nice because this deck is full of chonkers. But my favorite has to be Indomitable Might. It says enchanted creature gets +3/+3. Enchanted creature's controller may have it assign its combat damage as though it weren't blocked. This is devious. It pairs well with Yargle for a clean, unblockable one-shot. Sorry, brother, your walls of bossing ain't stopping this. Goat! And that's what I love about this deck. Every hit just has so much substance behind it. So much oomph. Like... or... it just feels great to use, and it's a lot more telegraphed than other classic one-shots or combos in Magic the Gathering, which makes it a lot of fun to play with and play against. It's just good fun. So that's the main evasion. What about haste? Well, most of the haste enablers I've already touched on.
The boots.
But Anger and Rhythm of the Wild are worth noting as well. Rhythm of the Wild provides an extra layer of protection by making my creatures uncounterable, and that +1/+1 counter can reach the critical one-shot breakpoint if Malignus is in the graveyard and a player is at 40 life, which is really nice. So that's the main gameplay loop. Hit first, hit hard, just like real life. Also just like real life, Magic isn't fair, so we need game plans for even when our protection isn't enough and Karam gets blown off the face of the map. What was that one Tony Stark quote? If you're nothing without the commander, you shouldn't have it, or something like that. Well, in the wise words of Jack Harlow again,
I got options.
let's start with some of the obvious things to take advantage of the absurd amounts of power on the board under our control. We have cards like Flesh and Blood, Unleash Fury, Xenagos, and lots of big creatures in general. So I've included cards like Kazul's Fury, Stump Stomp, and best of all, Chandra's Ignition. These are all good cards for generally just deleting players. As they say, player removal is the best removal. And with all of this being mentioned, I've decided to add a personal favorite of mine, Jumbo Cactar. It's really hard to go wrong with this one. It just works with everything in the deck. So we have lots of potent synergy in this deck, but there's 2 tutors, especially, that if resolved can basically win you the game on the spot. The first and weaker option is Jared's Orders. Remember Leveler? Well, the Beamtown Bullies also happen to be in this deck. They work well because if you're desperate, you can force players to slug each other with your entombed creatures, and that is at the cost of losing them. But honestly, I don't really ever find myself doing this. This is like plan F of the deck, when plans A, B, C, D, and E all fail. But it is a cool option. It means that the Beamtown Bullies will never be a complete dead draw. Now, when you use it with Leveler, that's an insta-kill. If you have 8 mana and Jared's Orders in your hand, you can just kill someone because the Beamtown Bullies have haste. It's very good for politicking. It's very good for getting rid of a player that's pissed you off or is pillow forting or gaining tons of life, or just when you need to finish off that last opponent that's still standing. It's really consistent because of how your deck tends to tutor options, which means that you can adapt into this game plan on the fly, which is really cool. It's really fun. You can find and create lines as you play, which is really interesting. The other card that, if it resolves, almost ends the game on the spot is Defense of the Heart. Yeah, there is a lot of nasty stuff you can do with this. Apex Altasaur and Brash Taunter, who I haven't mentioned yet, but he's just generally good defensively and can take really good advantage of your high power creatures, immediately does at least 90 damage to the table, and 100 if you're willing to kill the dinosaur. And if you can give the dinosaur indestructible, Jumbo Cactar plus Jared also works if you have haste. Just kills everybody. Malignus and Jared can work if you have a damage doubler somewhere. You can do the Beamtown Bullies plus Leveler if you get the Violent Tumor and Entomb Leveler, which is really nice. Violent Tumor is just generally really good for tutoring. He turns battlefield tutors into graveyard tutors. Xenagos plus almost anything can take kills, especially since he gives haste. So, you know, Jumbo Cactar, Yargle, anything really. Also, Jumbo Cactar in general can just win games if you have Anger, Brawn, and or Filth, which you can also get via Violent Tumor if it's available. And the nice thing about all these combos is you can assemble all of these without tutors as well, or slowly in pieces as you're swinging people with Coram. It doesn't have to be all at once, and it's all enabled by that really powerful core we built earlier. Another backup is doing Entomb and Reanimate plays if you have the cards early in the game, and you can really just win the game early with these. I would prioritize Jumbo Cactar, Apex Altasaur, and Void Winnower, but I've won games with Galta and Impervious Great Worm. And if all else fails, you can just beat people down the old-fashioned way. Selvala and Avia ensure that you can get your big creatures down and add a little bit of pump and trample. And honestly, that's enough to just outmuscle some players. So that's an insane amount of backup options. Talk about diversity.
Some would say our greatest strength.
Let's review. We got Coram, our main strategy, but we can also kill people with Jared, Beamtown Bullies, Xenagos, Jumbo Cactar, etc., etc. And you know what makes all of this possible in such a dynamic way? It's that engine, bro. It gives you more control. I think the genius of Wolfie is that he builds a team with a super solid core game plan, like Coram, you know, nothing too crazy, but like it works, you know, big damage. So he builds a team with a super solid core game plan, and then he uses the rest of his team to cover his weaknesses, and this deck does the same. You have your main mode, alternate ways to dynamically overcome challenges, and cards that work well together no matter which mode you're in. And since it's so effective, I can add a ton of fun, silly, and super powerful stuff that I just want to play for fun. It's crazy. I think it's really interesting that I'm using a lot of the same cards that EDH Rec shows, but that one little paradigm tweak of how I want to run the deck means that the other half of the top cards are just nowhere to be found in my deck. This little experiment with intentionality in my design has helped me to find something truly special. And it's things like that that make me love Magic so much. Being able to build these things myself. It's a skill I'm definitely still learning. If you want to see the deck for yourself, I'll leave a link in the description. And that's about it. I hope you enjoyed watching. Sorry the mic quality is crusty. I'm literally recording this in my bedroom with my AirPods. I'm like against the wall surrounded by pillows, wearing a hoodie to try and make the sound better, and it's like 1,000,000 degrees. I'm sweating. If you have any questions or comments or anything else you want to say, let me know. If nothing else, I just hope you got something of value from this video. It was a lot of work, and I've never really done anything like this before, so I hope you enjoyed. I hope you have a good day. Don't forget you're loved here, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. I'm planning on doing a couple more deck tech videos. I actually have a mill deck that I'd love to do a deck tech on, as much as I shat on mill in this video. It's one of my favorite strategies. I'm thinking about doing a Zelda theory. Once Chapter 5 of Deltarune comes out, I would love to make a video about that. I'm currently working on a guide for Terraria sentries. I'm also planning on writing a short essay about parental deities in relation to Silksong and what that can mean for us. I think that might be a little interesting, and so much more. But yeah, that's about it for now. Bye bye.